You know, it's funny. I used to not like our Five for Breakfast soundtrack, but now it's kind of like gets me fired up. But good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fiber Broadband Association's Five for Breakfast. We're now in our 33rd episode of 2023. But before we kick off, I'd like to thank Wesco, the platinum sponsor of Five for Breakfast. You know, on Monday this week, the White House and the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, issued its final Build America, Buy America guidance. The content of the final guidance is based on OMB's review and consideration of the comments provided by the public stakeholders and federal agencies. The guidance provides guidance to the federal agencies on how to apply the Buy America preference set forth in the BABA or BABA to the federal awards for the infrastructure projects, including BEAD grants. And as part of this, that fiber has been classified under this guidance as a construction material, which is very important. And FBA is currently reviewing the guidance for our members. You know, in follow-up to Nokia's announcement with Vice President Harris about a week and a half ago on their plans to build their fiber access products in Wisconsin, today, Adtran with Mitch Landrieu, the president's infrastructure czar, are in Huntsville announcing its plans to invest up to $5 million in its Huntsville manufacturing facility to build its fiber access products in Alabama. So I think we'll see a wave of this as people move their manufacturing back to the US, just as President Biden has architected. Earlier this month, the Fiber Broadband Association launched its partnership with NTCA and our research partner Cartesian on version 3.0 of our state broadband playbook. The playbook is being rolled out in modules. They'll be issued over the next 2 months, including permitting and access to state and local right-of-ways and infrastructure, and establishing the extremely high-cost thresholds, cybersecurity, supply chain, application scoring, and the challenge process. The first 2 modules are now available on the Fiber Broadband Association's website. We'll be hosting a series of sessions to preview the content of the playbook, so stay tuned. We'll do that on Fiber for Breakfast. And I want to say congratulations to our good friend Jeff Gavelinsky on a wildly successful Mountain Connect conference in Denver last week. Just a lot of excellent speakers and great content. You know, I feel like everything's building towards Fiber Connect that starts on Sunday in Orlando. You know, Sunday we're going to have 5 pre-conference workshop tracks, ending with our welcome reception at 5:30. On Monday and Tuesday, we're going to have an amazing lineup of speakers during our general session. And our general session in the ballroom, you know, we've gone sparing no expense on the whole setup there. So on the main stage, and then in the afternoon, we're going to have 7 tracks of breakout sessions. Then on Monday night, we're going to have our Havana night party, and on Wednesday, we're going to close the conference with the State Broadband Summit. And the speaker lineup for the State Broadband Summit is fantastic, with members of Congress, the White House, NTI, the FCC, Department of Treasury, and of course, the State Broadband Office Director. So if you haven't registered, please do so today before we close registration. And our next and final regional Fiber Connect workshop will be in Minneapolis on October 24th. So you're not going to want to miss that. So please register today. So that brings us to today's Fiber for Breakfast session with Dritten Nesho, the global CEO of HarrisX, to discuss their latest research on bringing a customer perspective to home internet. But before I formally introduce today's guests, I'd like to introduce Trish Ehlers from our team, who's going to walk us through some housekeeping items.
Thanks, Gary, and good morning to everyone who's joined us today. Before I go over a few logistical items, I'd like to once again thank the platinum sponsor of Fiber for Breakfast, Wesco. Now, if you'd all keep in mind that everyone is in listen mode only, to ask a question, you can type it into the question box located within your control panel on the right side of your desktop screen. We'll host a Q&A session with our panelists at the end of today's webinar. This presentation is being recorded and will be available on FBA's website within 24 to 48 hours. You can find the recording in the Events tab under the Fiber for Breakfast drop-down option. At the conclusion of the presentation, you'll be prompted to complete a brief feedback survey. If you'd take a minute to do that, we'd really appreciate your input. I'll pass it back to Gary now to introduce our panelists and get us started. Gary?
Thanks, Trish. Good morning. I'm Gary Bolton, President and CEO of the Fiber Broadband Association. Last week on Fiber Breakfast, we had the pleasure of hearing from our friend Ron Westfall, the research director at Futurum Group, discuss why security is key to enduring fiber success. Today on Fiber Breakfast, our guest is Jitran Nitho, the global CEO of HarrisX, to discuss their latest research on bringing a customer perspective to the home internet. So Dritten is the CEO of HarrisX, a leading technology, media, and telecom-focused market research and data analytics company. Dritten also serves as a co-director of the Harvard-Harris Poll, a monthly public policy poll conducted by the Harvard Center for American Political Studies and the Harris Poll. Previously, Dritten served in the roles of Director of Corporate Strategy and M&A, Director of Product Management, Director of Civil Technology at Microsoft. He's the co-founder and oversaw the development of Microsoft Pulse, a real-time audience consumer research platform, and he was involved in building Microsoft's campaign technology services ecosystem. Prior to Microsoft, Dritten served as Vice President and Chief of Staff to CEO at Penn Schoen Berlin, a leading market research, political polling, and strategic consulting firm, and was Director and Chief of Staff to the global CEO of Burleson Marsteller, the public relations and public affairs giant. Dritten's also a fellow at Harvard's Institute for Quantitative Social Sciences and lectures on political polling and opinion research at Harvard University and at George Washington University's Graduate School of Political Management. So welcome, Dritten. And for our audience, please type in your questions as we go and work them into the Q&A. With that, I'd like to turn things over to Dritten.
Gary, thank you very much for the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here with the Fiber Broadband Association and your members today. We wanted to look at consumer perspectives for the home internet industry with a specific focus on fiber. And one of the key elements that we wanted to bring to light in our conversation today is a little bit the competitive dynamics that we are seeing between wireless and wireline providers, and within that, within the wireline space, fiber versus DSL versus cable. And we've given you a little bit of a snapshot here in our data, but my email is dritan@harrisx.com. So for any follow-up questions or a deeper dive, please don't hesitate to email, and we'd love to give you the appropriate answer. You can go to the next slide, please. I think we can skip a little bit the agenda for today. We'll just get straight into the data. Gary gave us a wonderful introduction, so we can skip also the slide. Just a little bit about our ecosystem of research. Essentially, we focus on the connected consumer and any facet of the connected consumer, whether they are at home and the services that and the technology that they are using within the home, whether they are mobile and on the go with wireless services, but increasingly, obviously, we are seeing wearables which are connected to the internet, cars, and beyond that, a whole ecosystem of connected devices around the consumer. And we leverage a series of research trackers which are constantly in field and are refreshed every single month to be able to paint that 360-degree view around the connected consumer. The availability of data is never the issue. Obviously, figuring out what the signal is amongst all of this data is the challenge that most executives face today. And again, my team focuses on being able to kind of package those insights as succinctly as possible, as you'll see in the subsequent slides. We can go to the next slide, please. And again, today we are leveraging 3 pieces of information: our total in-home communication survey, which collects responses from about 90,000 American households over the course of the year, and deals with all issues of connectivity within the home, the technology, and also the consumer satisfaction and relationship with both the services and the technologies within their home. We also have a tracker which focuses on scraping home internet bills, connectivity bills, whether it's on the wireless or wireline side. that has an annual sample of about 10,000 home internet bills that we tap into. We also use a telemetry application. We have a panel of users that allow us to track how they're connecting to the internet and what content they are accessing, both when they are in home and when they are in the move. And what you'll see is an amalgamation of information from each of these three mediums of research that we use on a monthly basis. Next slide. So starting off with the good news, if we can go to the next slide, please. So fiber remains king, and the satisfaction with it, sorry, I just lost my screen. 1 second. The satisfaction with it is highest in terms of in-home connectivity providers. We try to look at a snapshot of the last 5 years and to compare amongst all home internet users what the overall provider satisfaction was in Q1 of 2018 and what that satisfaction was in Q2 of 2023. So just the quarter that finished, and you see that satisfaction for fiber has grown by 10% from 72 to 82%. And that outpaces the growth that we have seen for cable and also for DSL. And it's wonderful to see that the picture is strong, and the satisfaction of fiber customers, which has risen by 10 points, is the highest within the industry. Next slide. And so then the second question that we wanted to answer is that what explains this rise in satisfaction, and specifically, is the rise due to higher speeds? And when we look at the market, there's essentially two types of consumers. There's consumers that have speeds of 100 Mbps or less. These consumers tend to pay less for their services, and in general, they tend to be satisfied because their expectations are also lower compared to consumers that pay for a higher bandwidth, higher throughput, and higher speeds. And then really at about 100 Mbps going on to 1 gigabyte speeds or higher, we see a very, very clear story about the impact of throughput and speeds on consumer satisfaction. If you're in that 101 to 200 Mbps range, your satisfaction is high at 66%, but the satisfaction grows steadily as you move into the next bucket, 200 to 400 Mbps, and then the same picture as you move into 400 to 1000 Mbps or 1 gigabyte speeds, and then it just skyrockets with 1 gigabyte speeds plus. So speed does matter, and the investments that have been made in providing for better throughput and better speeds really show themselves in the data and in the research in a clear and unambiguous way. Okay, go to the next slide. Now, what is quite interesting is both the numbers that we are seeing around adoption and the numbers that we are seeing around awareness of gigabit speeds. And there are some usable or exploitable market gaps here in terms of the reality in the industry and the perceptions that consumers have. So when we look at our bill capture technology and tracker, we have seen a steady rise in gigabit plus speed adoptions between Q1 of 2021 and Q2 of 2023. And that's an 8% increase overall, which is both due to consumers upgrading their speeds for better throughputs, and also the investments that the industry and various players in the industry have made to provide consumers better speeds, given also the direct relationship that that has with satisfaction. However, awareness of the availability of gigabit internet in the market is actually quite low. at 36%. And this is from one of our survey-based trackers, the total in-home communication tracker. And actually, what was quite interesting, when we asked consumers how many consumers had gigabit speed access within their home, that number was 9%, which is significantly lower than the 19% that we know for a fact from their bills that do have gigabit speed access within their home. So the bottom line is that many consumers are not properly informed of the kind of speeds that they have. And even when they do have access to those speeds, chances are that they don't think that they do have access to those speeds. And this is a gap that can be closed through effective communication, constant communication, effective marketing, constant marketing. And it's a gap that should pay dividends for the industry, especially given the much higher satisfaction rates that we see in play with gigabit plus speeds. And perception is as important as reality when it comes to the consumer mindset around these things, because again, it's something that they don't measure on a constant basis. They just have a feel around their internet connectivity and their internet needs. So you might even make the case that perception is even more important than the actuality of the service that they're accessing. Okay, go to the next slide. So though highly satisfied, we are also seeing that fiber internet customers can still be restless. And there is an increasing dynamic within the market of cross-category switching, especially as wireless providers are increasingly providing home internet to users. T-Mobile and Verizon have obviously been leaders in connecting their 5G network to in-home connectivity boxes, and that directly competes with fiber, DSL, cable, and the traditional providers of in-home connectivity. And there's some interesting findings that we're seeing in this space, which we can see in the next slide. So what you're seeing here is the self-stated responses among home internet subscribers on their likelihood to cancel or their likelihood to switch home internet. Now, likelihood to switch rates are lower than likelihood to cancel, and that's because the way that we frame the likelihood to switch question is switching within the category, or switching amongst fiber, DSL, and cable in-home connectivity providers. These customers who are likely to switch tend to be looking for better pricing, and they tend to be thinking only in terms of in-category changes for their in-home connectivity. What we have seen very recently is a lot of the rise of customers who are telling us that they are likely to cancel the service altogether. And the way that the likely to cancel question is framed is in assessing the consumer's inclination to basically cancel in-home connectivity through traditional providers and use more wireless or alternative methods of connectivity day in and day out. And here's where we see that the consumers that are likely to cancel also tend to be wealthier consumers. They tend to be consumers that are highly connected and with multiple wireless lines. And so we see the rise of cross-industry competition and cross-industry dynamic, and this is something that definitely, your industry has to take note. Cable is doing slightly better in the likelihood to cancel, in part because cable service acquisition is driven as much by the entertainment bundle and the access to content as it is driven by the connectivity aspect of it all, whereas fiber and DSL are more holistically driven by the connectivity component. And if you see the likelihood to cancel numbers for fiber, the number rises to 10%, and then for DSL, it's significantly higher at 13%. This also indicates that there is opportunity to create better stickiness for your service with customers, especially by bundling it with different streaming services and different access to applications that consumers are very much going after and are top of mind, primarily around content, given the stickiness of content, but not just limited to that. And go to the next slide. And so here we wanted to look a little bit at the reasons why, top reasons to cancel and top reason to switch providers. And again, the top reason to cancel was I can access the internet on my phone or through free Wi-Fi or some alternative Wi-Fi medium. And top reason to switch providers, as I mentioned, was for a better price or a better promotion. And go to the next slide. So in terms of a summary, and we very much want to open it up to your questions and hope that these findings were at least provocative in the good way for a good set of questions and a good conversation. But the fiber industry has done very well so far, winning the race for satisfied consumers, and especially given their CapEx investments and availability of higher speeds for consumers. There are some marketing gaps, some knowledge and awareness gaps that need to be addressed, and they will go a long way to resolving some of the pain points that we are seeing within the industry. And then the final point is, there needs to be an industry-wide answer to the competition that is increasingly coming to light from the wireless providers and their own in-home internet provisions, which are driving this likelihood to cancel over the course of the next 12 months numbers, and again present now a growing threat to in-home connectivity via fiber. So with that, I'll pass it on back to Gary, and he will open it up for some questions from the audience.
Well, Jetin, this is really interesting. So it's one of the things we've noticed in our studies. How many, you said 9,000, how many people responded to this survey?
So in terms of bills, right, we collect about 1,000 bills every month. So it's about 10,000 over the course of the year from a bill analysis and bill scraping perspective. In terms of households, that number is about 90,000. So
90,000. So 90,000.
This is a
pretty comprehensive study. What
yes.
we find is that when we do our research, we might do a telephone survey or internet or email survey, and consumers don't seem to have any clue what kind of service, because we'll compare their bill because they know they have Wi-Fi, and so they don't really understand what their Wi-Fi is connected to, whether it's fiber, cable, something else. Are you guys seeing any discrepancy when you ask these questions? That are people accurate on understanding what service they have?
Well, in general, with connected consumers, you want to reach them through a connected medium. So surveys that are administered essentially via smartphones, tablets, or PCs, because they are in a connected environment, and they'll give you better answers about that connected environment. Phone does better with older consumers, but usually they're also the type of consumers, as you say, that can't tell very much the difference. So that's sort of one point to keep in mind. The second point to keep in mind is that ambiguity can work both ways. And right now, the dynamic that we're seeing in the marketplace is that the ambiguity around the provision of the services that most fiber consumers have is being exploited by the challengers in the connectivity industry, especially, I would say, the very well capitalized wireless providers that are coming in and providing in-home internet services. This is why you see that likelihood to cancel and switch across category numbers jumping so high. And that's certainly something that you pointed out to me, Gary, when we were doing a dry run for the session. And I think it's also fairly provocative for the rest of the attendees. We expect the number only to keep going up as the likes of T-Mobile and Verizon are put more marketing dollars behind their 5G enabled in-home connectivity services.
we looked at fixed wireless. We spent a lot of time looking at fixed wireless, and coming out of the pandemic, the fixed wireless was gaining a lot of strong market share, largely because T-Mobile had some really below market pricing, so you could get some for very cheap, get reasonable data rates. But then last fall, that started to kind of top out, and now it's starting to decline. Is that what you're seeing?
I think that the oscillations are really in terms of quarter-over-quarter pickup rates and customer acquisition rates. Yes, they vary, but the trend is a clear upward trend. And you're absolutely right that clear upward trend is driven by below market pricing or very aggressive, very competitive pricing from the wireless providers for this, fixed services. But also it's driven by increased availability in content and bundling, especially with regards to streaming services. And you can see that Verizon has been very aggressive with that, even giving you flexibility to choose what kind of content do you access month in and month out, and really playing into this switcher trend that we see within the content space. And in a similar fashion, T-Mobile as well, and following suit more and more aggressively. So the overall trend, the secular trend is there, and it's quite strong, and it has to be taken seriously.
Yeah, so one of the things I noticed, so my cell service, this mobile service is, even though I have a very generous plan, I get data capped out. I travel a lot, so I download lots and lots of books, and you wouldn't think they would take up that much space, but evidently they do on my phone. And I get these notes saying that they're going to start throttling me. It might be 10 days left in the month, but I've hit my data cap and I'm going to get throttled. Is one of the things I think that we're seeing in our studies, and what we're certainly seeing from our members, is that the in-home experience now is becoming king. And so, and I don't know if you guys got into that, but it's, we're starting to see a lot more immersive in-home experience, with more mesh Wi-Fi networking and more features available, as well as bundling. Like my fiber service gives me free HBO or something like that, and doing things to try to make it sticky. It looked like that from that one chart where people were dropping, if they dropped their fiber service, like, for example, I was in South Africa last year, and I tried to see if I could make it through a whole week without using my international wireless data. I was trying to do everything on Wi-Fi, which I made it almost to the last end of the week, but then I had to use Uber. So once I went outside, I had to, turn on my international. So I wonder if that's just indicating that people, high-income people, might be travel a lot and just use hotel Wi-Fi and their mobile devices and hotspots because they're moving between houses and on the road. Or did you get any insight on that?
Well, the metric that we look at is movers, right? I mean, a lot of the source of switching behavior and also canceling behavior within the industry tends to be moving homes. And what's surprising about that 10% number is that only 40% or even less of those respondents are movers. Usually, if the mover number was higher, and these are people that are moving dwellings or moving homes, then we would say that the risk is minimal, and there's a confounding variable, or there's another reason that's driving these people to cancel, but someone else will pick them back up within the industry at a later point in time. Because close to 2/3 of the respondents are not movers, and they tend to be this hyper connected on the wireless side of the equation, better to do customers, especially millennial fathers and kind of more going on to middle-aged men, then the story is deeper, right? And the story is one of the competitive pressures within the marketplace. However, you're absolutely right that fiber is best positioned to service consumers with in-home connectivity, and there's a lot of challenges still within fixed wireless, and what is being used. And that again presents an opportunity for you to for your industry to strike back, right, and make sure that this trend doesn't continue to grow and grow at pace, but really consumers start understanding that if you want reliant speeds, and reliability is as important as the availability of throughput speeds, then you should think about fiber. And if you are someone who engages in working remotely or gaming or heavy streaming, there's likely a natural limit to what fixed wireless can provide for you, especially if you have multiple people doing those types of heavy throughput activities within the same household. So I think that the story here is 9 parts good, 1 part's potentially bad, and I don't want to lose sight of that. However, it's obviously where we see movements in the market, so we would be remiss not to call it out.
So basically, all the operators need to take advantage of the performance advantage with fiber and make sure they bundle a lot of entertainment and other things to get the maximum benefit for the subscriber.
Bundling works.
Hey, so Drenton, thank you so much. Really appreciate your research and your industry insights. So thank you again. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Look forward to getting back together next Wednesday for Fiber Breakfast. We're going to be speaking with Eric Vital, the Executive Director of the Federal Permitting Improvement Steering Committee, on the topic of Federal Permitting Council, moving broadband permitting at gigabit speeds. So I can't think of anything more critical as we're accelerating broadband deployment than getting permitting right. So it's going to be a great session. We'll see you guys. See you Sunday in Orlando, and see you Wednesday on Fire for Breakfast. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.